Did you know that your risk register, it could be lying to you right now? Because if your risk register looks more like a checklist than an actual battle plan to attack risks, then you're doing it wrong. And today I'm going to show you 7 steps to master risk identification like a true risk management professional. Whether you're new to project management or prepping for the PMI RMP exam, this will change how you lead risks on your projects and make sure that whatever risk register or risk log that you are using is actually effective and not giving you false information. The first thing we have to do is start with context. This is where we review our project documents and those EEFs. We need to pull up our project charter, that work breakdown schedule, and lessons learned from past work. Then expand outward. What's going on in your industry? Are there regulatory shifts happening? Was there a new presidential election recently? All of these affect your project, which is why we call them enterprise environmental factors. And they can surface hidden risks if you actually focus on them and take the time to just look into them. To me, I like to think back to when I was in the military, and I think about when we did any type of planning, I always had to focus on what the terrain looks like before moving into the area. And just like me researching terrain, you need to study your project's terrain before identifying risks. You need to understand everything that can happen because it's not just going to impact other area. I mean, it's going to impact other areas of your project planning, but for risk management, it needs to be crystal clear. What are the impacts internally and externally to your project, and how can that influence your work to bring that valuable end state that you're looking for? The next thing I want you to think about is engaging your stakeholders early. Your stakeholders, they're walking, talking risk sensors. But don't just send them a survey. Put them in early. Talk to your tech leads, your financial partners, that seasoned SME that you have sitting there not doing much right now. Tools like stakeholder interviews, RACI chart analysis, they're gold mines for figuring out risks. Because let's be real, your development lead probably knows what's going to break way before it ever happens or when you're going to figure it out. So make sure you bring your stakeholders into your risk management processes, especially in that risk identification phase, because they are going to tell you 10, 100 times more than what you could ever figure out on your own. Next, make sure you're choosing the technique that fits for what you're doing. The default is always brainstorming. Yep, we're going to go brainstorm over here. Everyone talks about brainstorming, but it's not the whole picture. It's not the number one golden resource when it comes to risk management and risk identification. Granted, it's a great technique and it's a great way to just get ideas on a board, but you need to find other ways to find all your risks. Because things like the Delphi technique, where you actually build consensus, or using prompt lists, that helps you with structured thinking and maybe even builds into the brainstorming. But when you use the prompt list to actually go systematically risk by risk area, you can really pull out a lot in there. Also, there's this SWOT analysis. This helps you with those big pictures analysis and just going through your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Because, as I say all the time, you can't avoid those opportunities and only focus on your threats. So, SWOT analysis is something I highly encourage a lot of people to get done in their projects. And don't get sucked into any one thing. As we say in the military, don't fall in love with your plan. Be willing to integrate multiple ways of doing identification. Do brainstorming up front with a SWOT analysis right after, and then move into a Delphi or prompt list review. Whatever you have to do, mix them together. But this goes back to that stakeholder. Know your stakeholders. Know what works best for them. Next is you have to run a risk workshop. The risk workshop is where risk identification is going to come to life. This is where risk identification will come to life. This is where you actually sit down and you can do so much work, but yet so many people skip the risk workshop because workshop sounds scary to them. Not too sure, but you want to pull your team together and actually systematically go through the whole risk identification process and walk through to building that risk register. Because if you pull everyone together and you build it as a team, you're going to have more influence on the team because they understand where you built it from. Also, you're going to have more buy-in because they helped you build it. So how do you run the risk workshop? First thing you want to do is you need a neutral facilitator. You need to set up some good visual boards so everyone knows what's going on. And you need to log every idea. Because up front, when you're doing this identification piece, you log everything. You put everything out there. Then later you're going to refine it. So that's when you're going to start pulling things off and putting things together. All right. Make sure you have room for everyone to have a voice throughout the risk workshop. Don't let one stakeholder take over the whole thing. Don't let someone sit in the room and not participate. Engage them. Make sure you're seeing what they're thinking. Even their one idea can change an entire project from failure to success. Now, if you want to go deeper on risk workshops, then you have to join my course on how to run a risk workshop. It is a full playbook from initiating your project through closure on what you need to do around risk workshops, risk registers, down to the emails you send the risk owners. You'll get facilitating scripts, templates, the exact steps to lead the sessions that actually work. I'm going to put a link down at the top of the description. Go ahead, check it out. And I'm telling you, it's going to make your ability to run risk workshops even more effective. All right, and on to step 5. We need to make sure that we're documenting risks precisely. Vague risks lead to bad decisions. You need to make sure that you're using those clear risk statements. Cause, event, impact. An example being, if the approval takes 4 weeks longer than expected, go live is going to be delayed by 2 sprints. Using the simple wording like that risk is something that someone can look at, understand, and actually manage it afterwards. Now for step 6, something that so many project managers, risk managers skip. Half of them probably don't even actually know what this is, which is using the risk breakdown structure to help find patterns in your risks. Are most of your risks technical, legal, vendor related? If 30% of them are legal, maybe you need a separate review with legal counsel to go through your legal risks and see what you can take care of right away. The risk breakdown structure lets you zoom out. It lets you spot those themes in your project that you might not have seen if you hadn't built it. This all helps build a stronger risk management strategy for your projects. Too many PMs skip this. Don't be one of them. And last but not least is make it iterative. Don't just set and forget your risk register. Risk evolve throughout your projects. So should the process. Revisit your risk identification at every phase gate, sprint review, change request. Whenever you have a chance, make sure you're going back through that risk register. Go through those risks that you identified, but put them as a low priority because their priority may have changed a month and a half later. A pro tip, something I teach all my project managers, is create a 15-minute check-in every week. Ask what's new, what's shifting, and what do we have to do about it. Those little risk check ins now can save major cleanup on your project later on. Here's the thing, great PMs don't just manage risks, they lead through them. They make it normal to talk about uncertainty early and often throughout the project. That helps build trust, and it avoids those nasty surprises later, the ones that we all hate. Now, go lead your risk workshops with confidence. And while you're here, make sure you like this video, drop a comment with your favorite risk identification technique, and subscribe to my channel for weekly project management, risk management, and leadership insights. And if you're really motivated, go grab my free risk register template. I'll throw a link for that down in the description. Share this with a PM that needs to level up their risk management game. They're only going to thank you later. And if you're wondering out more about that risk register, just go check out this video right here, where I'll give you a more deeper dive into it. All right, I'm Ross Parker, the bearded PM. 44 Risk PM, out.